Join me, Darren Grimes, for Real Britain every Saturday and Sunday from 2 p.m. A news hour that comes with a trigger warning. Scorching hot opinion with prominent guests saying the unsayable and a little bit of weekend fun thrown in. Unlike other broadcasters, I won't be forgetting what the B in our name stands for. So howie in for Real Britain Saturday and Sunday from 2 p.m.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Good afternoon, it's just gone 6 o'clock. I'm Simon Pusey in the GB Newsroom. The family of Archie Battersby have said they want something good to come out of this tragedy as they call for an inquiry following his death. The 12-year-old died in the Royal London Hospital on Saturday after weeks of legal battles. He'd been in a coma since he was found unconscious by his mother at home in April. The family say they'd had to fight for Archie's right to live with everything stacked against them. Bart's NHS Health Trust issued a statement saying medical staff provided high-quality care with extraordinary compassion. Liz Truss has pledged to cut taxes immediately if she wins the Tory leadership race, a plan criticised by rival Rishi Sunak as being unrealistic. Writing in The Times, the former Chancellor says adding more borrowed money to the economy could make inflation worse, describing Liz Truss's plans as starry-eyed. The Foreign Secretary says she'll use an emergency budget to cut taxes, as well as bring forward scrapping the national insurance hike by 6 months. Former leadership hopeful Penny Mordaunt told us Liz Truss is ready to take the reins.
I think she really wants to ensure she's ready to hit the ground running, to have that emergency budget, to alleviate some of the cost of living issues that people are facing, but also to create that modern economic framework that we need to really fire up our economy and get things going again. That's what people want to see, and that's why I've chosen her. I've got a lot of respect for Rishi, but I think that she really understands what the nation needs now.
Tory MP and former Education Secretary Damien Hinds, who's supporting Rishi Sunak, told GB News Sunak would introduce more economic support if needed.
He has been clear that that more help may be needed and can be forthcoming, and it's wrong. It's absolutely wrong to put out of the question. This is about a unique situation that we find ourselves in. Combination of COVID and Putin's aggression in Ukraine, and people are finding it extremely difficult to deal with that.
Detectives are urging the public to provide any information they may have about the disappearance of a missing student nurse. Owami Davies was last seen in the early hours of the 7th of July as she was walking along Derby Road in West Croydon. 5 people have now been arrested, 2 on suspicion of murder and 3 on suspicion of kidnap. 4 of the suspects have been released on bail. The Met's Specialist Crime Command says officers are working tirelessly to follow every line of inquiry. Israeli and Palestinian fighters have agreed a truce from this evening following 3 days of violence. Egyptian negotiators have been liaising with both sides to de-escalate. The region has been seen shelling from both sides in recent days following a strike by Israeli forces on Friday against jihadist militants. In sport, England have won gold in hockey for the first time at the Commonwealth Games, beating Australia. The women's hockey team, who is 4th in the world rankings, won 2-1 against the Hockey Roos at the University of Birmingham Hockey Centre. The Hockey Roos have remained unbeaten against England since 2013. The 3-time silver medalists' victory came less than 24 hours after the men's team suffered defeat. They were also playing Australia. TV, online and DAB+ radio. This is GB News. We'll have more news at the top of the next hour.
Now, you may have missed this one, but local authorities have asked the public to stitch on their neighbours if they see them using a hosepipe during the ongoing ban. Anyone who's caught for this crime will be taken to court for any persistent breaches, which include watering a garden, cleaning a vehicle, or washing windows, walls, paths and patios. And they will also face a fine of up to £1,000. Rosie.
We've got to do something, haven't we? I mean, just coming back to London for the show, everything's golden. You know, I've never seen London like it. There's no green anything anymore, and we do need to do something. You know, but there will be people desperate to water their gardens who are really frustrated. But Southern Water is not popular in my patch, so they're going to be even less popular, I think, imposing a ban. You know,
yeah, you said you're doing a public meeting about this, aren't you, next week?
I held a public meeting last August because basically every time it rains, which is quite frequent in Kent, usually, we've got poo and God knows what else floating around our coastline in East Kent, and our economy and our way of life revolves around that. So we can't go sailing, we can't fish, we got, you know, all the things that we enjoy doing, swimming, we can't do. And it's affecting our tourism industry, while this particular company make enormous profits, most of which are going to their shareholders and their chief executives. So they're not popular anyway. People in my patch are already saying they're not going to pay their bill. If they're now not even allowed to water their gardens, I think there's going to be another backlash. So we'll have to see how that goes down.
David?
Yeah, I mean, I entirely agree. What's ludicrous is to hear a minister seeming to want to condemn people for actually wanting to enjoy the uses to which they can put water in their home, nice garden and so on. Look, the water companies are an absolute disgrace. They were privatised, which is fine, but now they're owned by mainly foreign money who doesn't care about us. We're merely a group of people to be exploited. What is going on when you have still huge amounts of water being wasted through leakages?
Absolutely.
Huge amounts. And when, you know, in the middle of London, there was supposed to be a way of taking water, creating fresh water in a recycling plant. And that has cost £250 million, and it doesn't work. And I would like to see ministers actually taking on the water companies. Look, at the end of the day, it's a pretty lousy summer for a lot of people. I mean, the weather is good, but, you know, a lot of people have real worries. If you want to pot around your garden and you want to actually grow some lovely flowers and you want to live in a situation where you feel proud to actually sit in a garden like that you've slaved over, what are we doing threatening these people with being imprisoned or fined? You know, this government it should have learnt its lesson from what happened during the pandemic. People are sick of being threatened, and threatened by people who they do the threats, but they don't actually behave themselves. I'd love to believe that minister didn't have anything growing in his garden.
Well,
time to take the water companies back into public ownership.
Oh, there it is. There it is.
Sorry, had to get that.
Yeah, well, there's one way of making it worse, I
If anyone's
guess.
got that on their bingo card, you can tick it off. Right, now, well, send us your views. Like, are you being affected by the hosepipe ban? Will you stick to it? Do you think government's going too far by saying they're going to fine people? We've got lots of your views come in on other things. Today, we have got John here on the Tory leadership who says it's hard to be able to pick Rishi Sunak or Liz Truss as the Tories have the same record on illegal immigration. Rosie?
I don't know quite the point that John is making there. I mean, I remember David Cameron standing on a leadership hustings similar to the ones we've got now back in 2010, I think, saying that he would cap immigration at, I think, 10,000. That never happened. You know, under the Conservatives, who were supposed to control immigration, it's gone through the roof. We've heard the figures on the news this morning. I happen to be pro-refugee, pro-asylum seekers, and all of the charities based in Kent that help those small boats, the people that are taking that treacherous crossing. You know, we mostly welcome those people into Kent, and you know, they have had to decide between life and death. They're coming from war-torn regions. They don't do that lightly. You do not put your family in a boat unless you feel that it's worse where you are. So I think we should be helping as many people as possible. But these numbers are not sustainable. That's also true. So, and we don't have enough housing stock, certainly in Kent. So a solution has to be found. I'm not pretending I know what that is, but I don't think it's sending people to Rwanda. And whatever's happening isn't working, is it?
No. Well, what views have you got for us? What have our fantastic viewers been saying today?
Graham has said lots of people seem to be unhappy with the 6 or so weeks of the Tory leadership campaign, yet they were happy with the 2-year-long political assassination of Boris Johnson. I don't know, obviously I'd take issue with that as an opposition MP. I don't know that he has been being assassinated in that sense. But, you know, there's obviously been a lot of unhappiness in his own benches at the fact that he continually embarrassed the party and continually broke the law. And, you know, I don't think that can have carried on. This is someone the world is looking at, you know, and it's an embarrassment when he's at G7 summits and things and all people are talking about is Partygate or birthday cake. You know, that couldn't carry on, could it?
And David, what have you got on our...
Well, Gillian says Rishi is to blame for much of our current financial crisis. Well, she doesn't condescend to particulars, so we can't really comment on
well, what's your views?
Why she says... Well, I think that... inevitably, one must have a divided view about Rishi Sunak. On the one level, he's plainly a very gifted person, very gifted. But there's no doubt about it. The way that money was thrown at every potential issue over the pandemic and the billions that were wasted, the amount of fraud that there was, I don't think he can escape responsibility for that.
Let's stick on the theme of Rishi, shall we? Because we've got a good bit coming up now. Now, you may have missed it. How could you have missed it? Because yesterday, Rishi Sunak sat down for an exclusive interview with Esther and Phil for GB News. You can watch the whole interview on Catch Up via the GB News app, but here is a little taster of what was discussed.
Quick question here. HS2 or high-speed broadband? Which one?
Well, look, we're doing both.
Oh, you've lost me there.
We are doing both.
Yeah, well, OK.
But look,
you've lost me.
I'm someone who believes in the future, right? So if you think, what do I think is more important? I think the digital economy is incredibly important.
OK,
right?
you're getting me back. You're winning me back.
There we go. But look, the other thing I'd say, look, the digital economy is important. And it's not just about broadband. It's about actually mobile phone signal in rural areas. That's something that is really important to me, and I help fund as Chancellor, because that's how you spread opportunity in a 21st century economy. It's how you grow the economy. And I also think we need to move away from focusing only on very large-scale infrastructure projects.
Right, well, the first one is HS2. Move away from that and save yourself some money.
Well, that's why I focused as Chancellor on promoting smaller scale projects in towns and communities up and down the country. I created the Levelling Up Fund because that's the kind of thing where you can spend smaller amounts of money that make an immediate difference to people's lives in their communities across the country. And that's my definition of levelling up. It's about spreading opportunity and making sure people have pride in the place they call home. I don't want them to wait, 3 decades for this massive new train to come. I want them to get it in the next year or two so they can see real change, and preferably before the next election. That's the kind of thing that I want to deliver.
It's across the north and not the HS2. I'm leaving that thought with you.
Yeah.
Was Nancy Pelosi right to go to Taiwan?
Yeah, of course she has the right to go to Taiwan, and her visit can absolutely not be an excuse for China to then behave in the way that it has and aggressively start doing manoeuvres in the Taiwan Straits. That's just obviously not acceptable, and we should be robust in standing up for the values that we believe in democratic freedom and sovereignty of nations, and making sure that people do not suffer unnecessary aggression. And I think we will do that with our allies, particularly in that region. We have a new defence partnership with Australia and America, which, our aircraft carrier has been over there. And so that's the kind of thing that we'll do. We have to be robust against defending it, not just over there, by the way, but here at home, which is why, as Chancellor, I was pleased that I passed a new law which gives us the powers to stop hostile states from infiltrating our companies, stealing our technology, so we could protect ourselves against that. That was something that was important to me, and I passed a law to give us the powers to do that, and as Prime Minister, I definitely will use them to keep us all safe.
Now, this week, the Bank of England have increased interest rates. Lots of families will be worried about their mortgage payments. People are worried about their energy bills, things like that. What do you say to people who say, look, your family's incredibly wealthy. You don't understand how hard it is for people and how hard the hardship they're going through at the moment and how difficult it is. What do you say to people who say you're out of touch, in effect, because of your own circumstances?
Yeah. So I've been out and about across the country, right, over the last week or two, talking to members of the public everywhere. And I've had so many people come and talk to me about furlough. And they've come and talked to me about what it did, what it meant to them, how it saved their job, helped their family, how their business was supported, and they wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the things I did. And they were grateful for that. And they all remember that first press conference I did as Chancellor, where I kind of arrived and people didn't quite know who I was. And then I did these things that really helped them at a time when they were really worried. And, I was reflecting, and, when I gave that press conference, I was wearing the same suit that I'm wearing today that now attracts a lot of commentary, right? I'm the same person who did all those things. And I think in this country, we judge people by their character and their actions, not by what's in their bank account or what they're wearing. And ultimately, I've always acted over the past couple of years to protect people, particularly the most vulnerable in society, through difficult times. That's what I did as Chancellor. Of course, that's what I'm going to do as Prime Minister. I feel that very personally. And look, I'm fortunate today, but that's not how I grew up. My grandparents emigrated here 60 years ago. They didn't have a lot, but they built a better life for themselves. My parents worked their socks off to provide a better life for their 3 children. Those are the values that I was raised with. It was about hard work, it was about family, it was about aspiration. Those are entirely conservative values. Those are the values that I want to champion. And it's because of that I want to be Prime Minister, because I want to make sure that everyone has the same opportunities that I did. And as Prime Minister, I want to deliver that.
Now, your family's been in the eye of the media storm. Your wife got lots of criticism about being a non-dom. Did you feel that was a legitimate criticism for people to make, or did you feel it was unfair that your wife was dragged into the political melee?
Look, thinking back on that is, look, obviously it was difficult, but reflecting on it, you learn from those experiences. And to your point, it's what I recognised is, whether I like it or not, at this level, your family is exposed to that. And, difficult as that is, uncomfortable it is, because they're the people you love, and, they're not the ones who chose to do this. But look, that's the way it is, right? And that's fair, and I accept that. And I've learned from that experience as a result.
And if you become Prime Minister, of course, that media spotlight would be even worse, presumably, on your family. I mean, are they ready for that?
Yes, and that actually, as I said, having learned from the experience over Easter, it's something that I'm much more prepared for, and I completely accept the scrutiny that comes, and I completely think that I can see why that's there, and difficult as it was at the time, because as I said, it's the people you love, you want to protect them, and they're not the ones who chose to do this. It's completely understandable that that's part of the process at this level, and I said I've learned from that experience, as have they.
You don't need to do this. You don't need to go through all this grief. You don't need to go all this charging about everywhere.
I said this. I think William Hague said this as well.
I think he might have said
what's
this.
he doing it for? That we supported you. I know that much.
I guess, some people say, look, he could just sit on a yacht sunning himself for the rest of his life. So why are you putting yourself through all of this?
Yeah. Actually, funny, you mentioned William Hague. So growing up, you talk about politics. People like William were political heroes of mine, and Nigel Lawson. And to have them be supportive of me now is incredibly humbling, actually. And it's a kind of pinch yourself type moment in this campaign when your political heroes are now helping support you in this endeavour, which is really lovely. Look, why am I doing it? I'm doing it for a simple reason, and that's because I love our country to bits. Our country did this extraordinary thing for my family and welcomed them here, allowed them to build a better life for themselves and their children. And that's why I want to be Prime Minister, because I want to do that for everyone. I want everyone's kids and grandkids to be able to have the same amazing opportunities that I had. I think my plan is the right one to lead us into that future, to build a country and a society built on those values of family and aspiration and hard work and hope. And I think I'm the right person to do it, and the right person to then go and smash Keir Starmer in the next election.
Do you know what that sounds to me? Payback time. Look, Rishi, thank you very much indeed for sitting down with us today and being so honest on your answers there. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you both.
Well, there we go. There was a GB News exclusive interview with Rishi Sunak. And Rosie, what did you make of that? I mean,
we're kind of a bit fed up of hearing the same old lines about people's backgrounds, and they're very well rehearsed, aren't they? But I mean, you know, we're in the closing few weeks, please God, of this contest. So, you know, he's got to stick to those. I think he had a fair point. You know, it is very difficult for your family when you're in the public eye. His wife didn't choose to stand. She's not in public life. But at the same time, it re-emphasises what I said earlier about him not being an ordinary person in the Commons. And I think there is a huge gap between his wealth and his lived experience and the majority of people. And I think that's something he's going to struggle to overcome with people giving him their votes, to be honest.
And David, what did you make of it?
Well, I think he's an attractive guy to listen to. I think he's animated, his facial expressions. He speaks well, of course, because he's British-born. There's no hint of anyone who wants to suggest that, you know, somehow or other, he is from an outsider. He isn't, and I think he can do a lot of good for Asian people of an Asian background in politics. I would like to see him succeed, but I think he has two crosses to bear, one of which is his record during the pandemic, of which I've already spoken. The other is the wife's money, and I just think he doesn't help himself. I mean, my wife is so annoyed with me for talking about this that she's going to buy me one, which is one of these self-heating coffee.
Oh, yes.
Because I keep making the point about these self-heating coffee mugs. I mean, I'm sorry, but, you know, if your wife's as rich as Croesus, you should come in with a chipped mug that someone you brought at an Oxfam shop. But seriously, I think...
I'm surprised your lovely wife isn't buying you a self-chilling champagne flute. That would be much more.
But I mean, if she does, she keeps very quiet about it and probably drinks it all herself as well, yeah.
Well, if you're wondering why Alistair is joining us, it's because, of course, we had the exclusive interview there with Esther and Philip. But Alistair, you've got a very exciting interview on Wednesday evening, haven't you?
Well, except, and I don't mean to be pedantic, but it really is very, very important. It is not an interview. We've had several debates so far, and the BBC have had a go, and ITV, Channel 4 and all the rest of them. What we as GB News are doing, and I am genuinely excited about it, is staging what we're calling a People's Forum. Mm-hmm. The first one is indeed on Wednesday. It's with Liz Truss, and it's in Salford in Manchester, in a town hall setting, and we've invited a range of people, some of whom are GB News viewers, some of whom are Daily Mail readers, or just folk who've said, oh, I've heard this is on, and we've asked them to submit a question, and the only real leverage, I guess, that we will have is to say, look, everybody wants to talk about the cost of living, they want to talk about immigration, they want to talk about boat people, and that kind of stuff. So we'll select kind of 5 areas, but we will then say, right, Diana, Rosie, David, your question, off you go. It's not me. I mean, I did one back in 2010, which wasn't interviews either. That was with Dave Cameron and Gordon Brown and Nick Clegg. And Adam Bolton did the same thing for Sky. And we both felt very strongly that the one failure that we had back in 2010 was that we didn't hear enough from the punters, to putting it quite bluntly. And that's what we are doing. It's very GB News. It's called the People's Forum, People's Channel, and all the rest of it. We've got an hour live. We've also oh, it's only Liz. And we've just listened to Philip and Esther talking to Rishi. We've also invited him to do one as well at his convenience. These guys are really busy. We've all been involved in campaigns in the past and know what it's like. And then on the 19th of this month, I'm delighted to say also, we are hosting the Tory hustings in Manchester as well. Fantastic. So that will definitely be both of them as well. So I think it's genuinely exciting. But the people who are kind enough to come along and put the questions, it'll be their gig, their show, them versus Liz, Liz versus them.
So will you be doing follow-up questions, or are you?
I think what I've described myself on social media as is a kind of referee. And so if for example, Liz were to say, no, I've always said X, Y or Z, I may just say, with respect, you didn't quite say that, whenever it was. Or if I think she's being slightly evasive and, you know, I'm the professional in that sense, and the person putting the question may want a little support, little assistance, I will happily do that. But if it's flowing, and Mrs. Higgins from wherever puts her question and Liz comes back with a really good comprehensive answer, that'll do me, fine. We've also got one or two follow-up questions if people have come in on the same theme. So I might say, OK, fine, Rosie, thanks very much. Now, Deanna, you also wanted to come in on that. And it's a small enough space, so I think we can make it do. And that's 5 o'clock on Wednesday, and it should be an absolute cracker.
Well, how exciting that GB News have managed to get one of those debates as well. Debates, interviews, people's forums, that's what we're calling it, isn't it? Yeah.
But I watched the debates, literally, that have happened so far, and you know, from lovely people like poor Kate falling over and collapsing on the podium. I thought the Channel 4...
Don't do that.
No, I will do my best not to do that. I mean, I thought, Krishna Guru Murphy is an absolutely superb presenter, but I thought that programme suffered slightly from not knowing whether it was a series of probing one-to-one interviews or an audience forum. I thought Julie Etchingham on ITV did very well with her format, and that's closer to what we're going on. Yep. But if I only contribute 5% of the airtime in that hour, I'll be a very happy bunny. And I think Liz and the audience, most importantly, will be content as well.
And Alison, we've got about a minute and a half. So quick whiz through what's on your show today at 12.
Two key things. We're continuing the theme because overnight it became really tasty and hairy between Liz and Rishi on tax, with Liz saying, no, I'm going to stick with the tax cuts and it's going to happen even sooner, front page story in the Telegraph, and getting back at Rishi saying he caused the recession, he was in command, as David was saying earlier on in your programme. And we're probing that with Henry Hill, who's news editor at Conservative Home, which, as you know, has a real big influence in these matters, but also Sean Worth, who used to work with Dave Cameron at Number 10, so he knows runners and riders and this stuff as well. And finally, briefly, because I can read your eyes like a book, we're doing the drought, and it really matters to agriculture, so we've got someone on from the NFU, and it matters to all of us who love pets and keep pets, so we've got a vet up from Winchester who's going to be talking about that as well.
Brilliant. Well, we were talking about that a little bit on our show earlier on today, weren't we, about the hosepipe bans and whatnot, and how worrying it is for people. Frankly.
Particularly for my farming community.
But for farmers, absolutely. I mean, sheep are dying because of mastitis, because they can't get water. They're all hoping to goodness that it's going to be a good harvest. It ain't at the moment. And they can't just squirt water like Holland at their liberty. So I think there are real problems down the road about accessibility of food and prices.
Absolutely. Well, there you go. Tune in at 12 o'clock for Alistair Stewart and Friends. But more importantly, Wednesday at 5 p.m?
Yeah.
Wednesday at 5 p.m. for the GB News People's Forum with Liz Truss. But stick with us, because coming up, strikes, and more strikes. Is there any end in sight? We'll explore that next, so don't go anywhere.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
The race for number 10 intensifies. We are giving you the chance to get to know our next Prime Minister. We've invited the two candidates to meet you, the GB News viewers, and let you put your questions to them. Head directly to gbnews.uk or send me your questions to questions@gbnews.uk.
Join Alistair Stewart for the People's Forum with Liz Truss. Wednesday at 5, only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Looking ahead to this evening's weather, and the UK will be mostly dry, although cloudiest in the north with light rain for western Scotland. Here are the details. A fine end to the day across southwest England with plenty of late evening sunshine. It will remain dry throughout this evening and tonight with temperatures only slowly falling away. Across southeast England, clear skies will persist this evening, leaving a fine and dry night, although warm with plenty of sunshine to end the weekend. A dry and fine evening across South Wales, although there may be some patchy low cloud, mist and fog tonight, particularly in the north. There'll be plenty of sunshine around to end the weekend across the Midlands. Tonight, a combination of clear spells and light winds brings a risk of some patchy mist and fog forming. Patchy cloud will persist across much of northeast England this evening, though there will be some late evening sunny spells too, remaining warm this evening and overnight with temperatures only slowly falling away. A mostly dry end to the weekend for southern Scotland with some sunny spells around. However, there may be the odd spot of light rain and drizzle over high ground. Any cloud across Northern Ireland will continue to break up this evening to allow for sunny spells. Clear spells tonight could lead to some patchy rural mist and fog forming though. A largely dry night though warm, especially in the east. A chance of some mist and fog in the west. That's how the weather is shaping up overnight into tomorrow morning.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, Matt. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Welcome back to the political correction. Now, rail passengers will be facing fresh disruption as train drivers at 9 companies have confirmed yet another strike. Members of the ASLEF union will go on strike next Saturday, with wider strikes for staff on the 18th and 20th of August, as well as a separate RMT strike on London Underground and some bus companies running services on behalf of TfL on the 19th of August. Not just that, but we've got port staff striking as well. I mean, it's looking like a pretty bleak summer, isn't it? And Rosie, I need to bring you in on this because ordinarily you would expect the Labour Party to be well behind the unions, well behind the strikes, well behind the workers, but I have no idea what Keir Starmer stands for in any of this.
It's not been a very strong leadership message, has it, in the last few weeks? I think people are a bit confused because we are traditionally the party of the unions and the party of workers, and Keir has kind of muddled thinking by the looks of it on this, you know, reprimanding one of the front bench and saying that the front bench generally are not allowed to go to strikes, because that was something he said in the last RMT strikes, if not this time around, and we've seen Lisa Nandy attend the strikes, Sam Tarry been representative for going, I will be going to support my local CWU, who are also on strike. I know them well, I know those workers, and actually they're not being greedy or unreasonable. The same with the train workers. It's not just about drivers, it's about people not being able to get comfort breaks because they're short-staffed and the rotas haven't been managed well by the management, as I understand it. So there are many complex issues. It's not just the headlines. I think you wouldn't go on strike in a job that you love, serving the public, unless you felt that you absolutely had to. So it would be nice to see Keir Starmer back those workers, in my opinion. And I'm sure he does, but perhaps it's just the messaging that's just been lost, but it hasn't been great for the party.
Do you think that's kind of the point, though? You know, you've mentioned there that some of the strikes, it's not just about pay, it's also about working conditions.
Yeah.
That always gets missed, doesn't it? Because the unions tend to be grandstanding a little bit and sort of blasting the airwaves, shouting down this wicked Tory government and all of this, which doesn't actually, I think, help the public get on side with what it is that some of the workers are trying to achieve.
I think you're right. It is difficult because unions are seen as aligned with a particular party and then it becomes political. But actually, they're just ordinary people who may not, those workers may not be affiliated to a particular party, but they do deserve their rights. They do deserve their breaks. I've heard, this isn't in the headlines, but I have heard of train staff having to use incontinence products because they're not able to take comfort breaks. That's pretty shocking. I've heard that from the workers themselves. So I think we need to really be honest about it and look at it like that, not in terms of, not framed by party politics, actually.
David, what's your stance on these strikes? I mean, we've heard some of the leadership candidates saying they're going to be much tougher. We've heard Grant Shapps saying that he may legislate to introduce a minimum level of service so that passengers can still roughly get from A to B. Are the Conservative Party being strong enough?
No, I think they are. And I won't take up with Rosie a number of the points she's raised because this is a different kind of show than people sort of shouting the odds in a way that people seek refuge from. But let me just say a little bit of personal history. My grandfather joined the Union of Railway Servants in the aftermath of the Taff Vale case. I'll ask you all about the Taff Vale case in a moment, but it was a very significant thing. And my other grandfather was a railway guard for the whole of his working life after he left the army and the First World War. So I've nothing against working people wanting decent standards. But I tell you this, these people are being exploited by a cynical leadership, particularly of the RMT. And what they're trying to do is to bring the nation to its knees by using crude industrial tactics. And Labour governments have had to cope with this before. Back in the 60s, there was a seaman strike, and Harold Wilson talked about a sinister group of politically motivated men. And what he meant was the union leaders, who what they were trying to do was basically use their members as a sledgehammer with which to beat the government. And I think that's what's happening now. Compared to a lot of working people, railway workers are not badly paid. And one of the things we should have learned from the 60s and 70s, when, if you remember, inflation went up to nearly 30%. And the reason was that when you allow rising prices to then give you a wages policy, and then, of course, you end up with vaulting inflation. And that is just something we cannot afford. But what I like about Grant Shapps is he says things and doesn't do anything about them. Why is that? He's been talking now for weeks and weeks and weeks about the need to put in legislation that there is a minimum service requirement. Why doesn't he get on with it?
He needs to get around the table as well, though. I think a lot of the unions have said he just will not attend talks and he won't sort of do that.
But look, my dear old friend Ken Livingstone, he wouldn't sit down with the railway workers. It's not the job of politicians in office, of whatever office it is, to actually determine what.
A fine ringtone there for David.
But I've always had that ringtone, not because I am pro Russia, but it used to be the ringtone when they won a gold medal in the old days, and I always thought it was a great tune. But I regret that, and I'm sorry.
Timing when we were talking about
exactly.
I should rebuke my elder son for ringing me at that point. Sorry about that.
That is quite all right. So, we've got these leadership contenders saying they're going to be tougher on the unions. Does that worry you from a kind of Labour perspective, or do you think David does have a point there about, you know, this potential for wage price inflation, which
I think we've seen the vote flip, haven't we? We've seen seats like yours come to the Tories, and so whoever is the next leader has to bear in mind that the traditional working class and northern kind of working vote has gone to the Tories. You know, we're trying to win it back, you're trying to keep it, so we can't just dismiss all workers as being too demanding or, you know, bringing the country to a halt. Those are also people who have to pay extra for each pint of milk, each loaf of bread and their fuel. You know, those are the people basically keeping the country running. My part of Kent has been cut off because we've had Operation Brock again coming to a standstill, and then with the train strikes, people cannot even get to work and get to spend money in the economy. So all of those things need to be looked at. And, you know, if they're going to keep those working voters, they can't just dismiss everybody.
But Rosie, the question you have to answer, forgive me, is we've got 13% inflation, or we're going towards 13% inflation. If pay demands are chasing inflation, when are we ever going to get inflation
That's true.
down?
We need those people to spend money as well. If they can't afford to and they're struggling, you know, it's a vicious circle, isn't it? We've got to sort of balance all of those things out.
The vicious circle is people thinking they're entitled to be compensated for unreasonable levels of inflation that has to be purged from our system.
Could argue that for days, I think.
Well, it's certainly an issue that's on all of our minds, I think, at the moment, isn't it? And whoever becomes Prime Minister in a few weeks' time is going to have a real challenge on their hands to get on top of it. But send us your thoughts on the rail strikes. Do you think they're justified? Do you not? Do you think the unions need to wind it in? Let us know, gbviews@gbnews.uk. When we come back after the break, we'll be asking our usual questions on our regular feature, Common Ground. So, despite all the bad news this week, we'll be picking out some of the big issues that actually bring us together. That's just after this short break.
As the race for number 10 intensifies, we are giving you the chance to get to know our next Prime Minister. We've invited the two candidates to meet you, the GB News viewers, and let you put your questions to them. Head directly to gbnews.uk or send me your questions to questions@gbnews.uk.
Join Alistair Stewart for the People's Forum with Liz Truss. Wednesday at 5, only on GB News, the People's Channel.
On Mark Dolan tonight, we have a simple plan, which is to inform, stimulate and entertain in equal measure. It's all about getting your opinions on the national television airwaves. I love my viewer emails, mark@gbnews.uk. So do join me from 9 p.m. to midnight every Friday, Saturday and Sunday for big guests, big opinions and a big presenter. 6'5", don't you know? See you then on GB News.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go? Just take me to the studio, please, Matt. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Welcome back. Now, each week on The Political Correction, we aim to talk to someone at the heart of his or her community to discuss what brings us together, in other words, our common ground. And this week, we are joined by Imam Ajmal Masroor. Imam, thank you for joining us this morning. And I know the first thing that you want to talk about is Muslim New Year.
Correct. Yes, we've just begun our New Year a few days ago. Today is the 9th day of the first calendar month in the Arabic calendar. It's called Muharram. It's significant for many reasons, but one of the biggest reasons, Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, it is said in the history, migrated from Mecca to Medina. When he arrived in the new city of Medina, he saw the Jewish people in the city fasting. So he inquired from their scholars, why are you fasting? They said, we're fasting to thank God for freeing us from the tyranny of Pharaoh. Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said, well, we will do the same. In fact, we'll do one more. We'll fast 2 days in the month of Muharram, the first calendar month of Arabic calendar. So Muslims fast on this particular month, will be fasting today, tomorrow, or the day after and the day after, so 2 fasts, to thank God for freeing Moses and his people from the oppression and subjugation that they were facing in Egypt under the leadership and rulers of the pharaohs. It is really interesting that Muslims are globally fasting for that. At a time when we all need to stay together, come together. And also the tragedy that's unfolding in Gaza right now. It is a tragedy that we're supposed to be cousins in our faith, and yet we see this awful conflict. There's no need for this conflict. And we should all come together and reflect on the true meaning of our faith. Moses, Jesus, and Muhammad, all of them, if they were alive and together today, they would be hugging, they would be together as brothers in faith, they would be arm in arm, hand in hand, wanting to put the world right, not fight with one another.
Well, you spoke there a little bit about religious leadership, of course, but you also want to talk to us about political leadership.
I do. Topsy-turvy political leadership today. Even what is false has become true. Lies are being celebrated. The more you can be deceptive, the more spinning you can do with your words, the more you are liked. You know, we've seen it throughout Boris Johnson Premier. We are seeing it globally, not just in the UK, but across the world. We are seeing Putin, an awful dictator. Many other dictators of the world are also doing evil things, and sometimes we're supporting them when it's convenient for us. We are opposing them when it's convenient for us. Moral leadership is lacking. Ethical leadership is lacking from political leaders today. And this is one thing that we really need to do something. There is a crisis in morality and ethics, and it must be demonstrated in our leadership from the front. If you're a liar, if you're a deceptive person, if you're a double-standard person, if you're if you've got all of these evil traits within you, we don't want you to be our leader. We want somebody who is decent human, a person who is honest and truthful, somebody who can rely on. That's our common ground.
And we certainly need some of that at the moment, given the situations that we find ourselves in. And then finally, a very difficult and very emotive topic, which is around Archie Battersby.
It is. Poor Archie has passed away, hasn't he? Now we pray for him and his family. Should we switch off machines of our loved ones who are acute in their condition, who are dependent on those machines? Unfortunately, this moral and ethical dilemma needs to be answered, both spiritually as well as from our personal perspective. Spiritual guidance from an Islamic perspective, as an imam, I would say, is that you and I are not in control of our life and death. As far as my faith is concerned, our life and death is determined somewhere else. I believe in God. God decides. If life comes to an end, it comes to an end. Unfortunately, the doctors have to make that very clinical and very difficult decision as to when to switch off the machine if the machine has been keeping you alive, in quote unquote. But my sympathy goes out to Archie's family. My sympathy goes out to anybody who is facing that dilemma. As an imam, I get that kind of phone call from many of my congregations who have their family members on life support machine. And I'll get that phone call to say, Imam, what should I do? And it is such a difficult dilemma. It's such a difficult challenge to tell somebody switch off the machine or to tell somebody don't. I cannot, I wouldn't want to be in that position like the doctor. So I have sympathy for everybody. My prayers for the family, and I wish them all the best. And I hope and pray that we can do things to make our lives better in all parts of the world.
Certainly the thoughts and prayers of the GB News team are with the family as well. Well, Imam, thank you for joining us today. That was Imam Ajmal Masroor joining us again for our regular feature, Common Ground. And we hope to see you on again very soon. Well, again, loads of you have been getting in contact with us, sharing your views. We're going to go into some of those now. We have got Michael to begin with, who says, David Mellor may have a point, although I disagree. Should it not also be the case that a small number of ministers can remove a prime minister? And that's on the Tory leadership. Been talking about it a lot. David, have you got some views there for us as well?
Well, I mean, a prime minister has to have the confidence of his party in Parliament. And if they choose to vote against him, well, so be it.
Yeah. What else have our GB News viewers been saying? David?
Oh, sorry.
That's all right.
Yes, I thought you were going to come back at me on that one.
No,
Provocative
giving you an
view
easy ride today.
about members of Parliament having power. No. Anyway, Dave in London says, I hope the polls are correct and that we get Liz Truss. Yes, she's making a lot of promises and she likely won't be able to deliver on all of them, but at least she's proposing some ideas. All we're getting from Rishi Sunak is more of the same. His vision gives me little hope for the future of our country.
Rosie?
Jane in Scarborough has said, listening to David Mellor, I'm happy to be included in the voting minority and assure him that my vote will be on the merit of both candidates. Rishi has those qualifications. He understands the economy, has integrity and political principle. David says, I can't understand why people condemn Rishi for being a wealthy person. These same people absolutely worship Premier League footballers who earn obscene amounts of money for kicking a ball about, just saying. I mean, that is a good point, isn't it, I guess? But they're not the people kind of making policy and they're entitled to their views, I guess.
Yeah, very true. And then we've had a couple coming in on Nancy Pelosi as well, obviously following our chat earlier around her visit to Taiwan. John says, I watched Pelosi tear up the State of the Union address in the Congress while President Trump was reading it. She has no respect for the institution she's a part of. She went there for her own reasons, wants to appear relevant before she retires. And I think we've got one more view on Nancy Pelosi as well there from Darryl. If David, you want to take that one?
Yes, Nancy Pelosi went to Taiwan against the advice of the government and its military advisors because she knows that Biden and the Democrats will get crushed at the midterm elections in the US, and this was a good chance to try and increase the Biden administration's popularity in these elections because they think many Americans will respect this move. Of course, this is dangerous and may backfire on the US and the West in general. Actually, I don't agree with Darryl on that because I think there was a political motivation. I think she went there to try to ensure that there is not a repetition by Biden of what he did in Afghanistan. So she really made him come out strongly in favour of the people of Taiwan, because although there's an ambivalence, as we know, that Taiwan is not really part of the community of nations, although China has never owned it. So it's not as though there's actually any serious problems for America in saying whatever they like on Taiwan. The reality is that this is a sign of how militant that China is becoming under Xi Jinping, who is not a man of peace, I fear.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys for sending in your views. And as you know, we like to finish on a little bit of sport. So we're now joined by the wonderful Aidan McGee to take us through all the biggest sports stories from this weekend. And Aidan, it's big weekend. Premier League is back.
Yeah, exactly. We kicked off on Friday evening. Arsenal went and got a very impressive result at Crystal Palace. It spent 113 million in the summer, looking like they might mean business. They had that awful end to last season where they did so well. They gathered momentum in the middle of the season, but just blew up right at the end. Had that humiliating defeat at Tottenham. They had that night at Newcastle. But it looked a little bit more robust into Friday's game. It's amazing what 113 million quid can do for you. And then yesterday we saw First out of the traps was Liverpool going to Fulham. I should say you don't usually get the top 6 teams playing each other anymore on the opening day of the season. I guess it's because it's generally perceived that the opening day of the season sometimes sees a few freak results. Sometimes the players aren't in the best condition because they've just come back from pre-season and not really regained full competitive match fitness. Would you agree with that, David?
Yes.
So you see, historically, I went back to '92. Remember, Norwich went to Highbury on opening day and won 4-2 and ended up finishing like third in the league. It was incredible. So you do get results like that sometimes. Fulham, they're perennial relegation fodder, quite frankly. When I say perennial, they go down, so it's every 2 years. Norwich and Fulham haven't played each other for 5 years because they keep missing each other, going up and down. It's actually true. So, that was 2-2. They took the lead twice. I think Fulham might have a better season this year. I think they've got a chance of finishing outside that bottom 3. We saw Newcastle play Nottingham Forest. Newcastle buoyed, of course, by Saudi billions. They've not really gone to town in the transfer market as yet. They spent a few quid, but because of financial fair play, they can't go for it in the way they might want to. So they're going to have to do it in piecemeal fashion over the short to medium term. They played Nottingham Forest, first time in the Premier League in 23 years. I mean, the thought when I was a child of Nottingham Forest not being in the Premier League was not something I consider.
Inconceivable.
Yeah, Brian Clough was a celebrity that transcended football, back-to-back European Cups, league title, etc. They're back. It's good to see a traditional club back. And then we fast forward to today, Manchester United. They're playing Brighton at home. I think they will win because Brighton have lost Yves Bissouma to Tottenham. They've also lost Marc Cucurella to Chelsea, 2 standout players for them last season as they finished in the top 10. They won the North London double at the end of last season. They went to Spurs and Arsenal and won it. Not often that happens. Manchester United, of course, they've had all the bother with Cristiano Ronaldo. Yeah. He didn't get booed last Sunday when he came on at Old Trafford, but he's pushing his luck in terms of his conduct. There's a suggestion that he's reached a level of his career where he just is concerned about personal glory rather than the team. And Roy Keane would be quick to remind him that it was the team that got him where he was.
And there's one question I need to ask you, because last Sunday we were discussing the match of the day, the Women's Euros. How did you feel seeing that final result come in when the whistle was blown?
Yeah, it was brilliant. I mean, I do think it was a QPR fan who scored the winning goal, and she immediately went and reached for a QPR flag.
But despite that...
they made a fuss of her at QPR yesterday. I was down at Charlton, but they made a fuss of her at QPR, and they brought her on the pitch and everything, and it was great to see her. She's a proper rice-lipped girl as well.
And Rosie, what was your reaction?
We were ecstatic, weren't we? I think every politician, every female politician, I was in floods of tears. It was really exciting. Can I just put in a shout-out to Grace Bulsden, my constituent, who's part of the England hockey team, though, in the Commonwealth Games.
Yeah.
I think we're still second in the overall league table, aren't we?
We are, but Team England have got a chance of winning gold this afternoon. They play Australia at 3 o'clock. They knocked out the holders, or the current champions from the Gold Coast 4 years ago yesterday. No, yesterday. She saved 4 penalties yesterday morning, Maddie Hinch. So they got a great chance. England strong at hockey. And don't pay too much attention to the medals table, of course. Don't forget, the teams are divided up in terms of the UK, with England, Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland. Yes, OK, you don't get the big guys. Some of the big major nations aren't in there, but we're still second in the table, doing well, hold our own.
Well, certainly a fantastic summer of sport, as always, and some brilliant results coming in. I mean, seeing the Lionesses win it just made my year, I think.
Definitely.
Such a fantastic result. Well, thank you guys for tuning in with us today. That's it from the Political Correction for today. And a special thanks to Rosie and David for joining me here in the studio, and to all our other guests too.
Looking ahead to this evening's weather, and the UK will be mostly dry, although cloudiest in the north with light rain for western Scotland. Here are the details. A fine end to the day across southwest England with plenty of late evening sunshine. It will remain dry throughout this evening and tonight, with temperatures only slowly falling away. Across southeast England, clear skies will persist this evening, leaving a fine and dry night, although warm with plenty of sunshine to end the weekend. A dry and fine evening across South Wales, although there may be some patchy low cloud, mist and fog tonight, particularly in the north. There'll be plenty of sunshine around to end the weekend across the Midlands. Tonight, a combination of clear spells and light winds brings a risk of some patchy mist and fog forming. Patchy cloud will persist across much of northeast England this evening, though there will be some late evening sunny spells too, remaining warm this evening and overnight with temperatures only slowly falling away. A mostly dry end to the weekend for southern Scotland with some sunny spells around. However, there may be the odd spot of light rain and drizzle over high ground. Any cloud across Northern Ireland will continue to break up